There's been a lot of interest in what exactly is the potential value of Tesla's Optimus robot. So today, we're going to review the business model, the cost savings potential in a factory, and for the first time ever, we're going to show you exactly what companies like Walmart, Amazon, UPS, and FedEx could save. Our guest today, Cern Basher, has been building these bot financial models and has continued to improve them. Today, he's going to share his idea of what can happen if and when humanoids start to display millions of workers. He calls his big idea Amplify as a way to save society. Cern is a chartered financial analyst. He's currently running his own investment advisory firm called Brilliant Advice, providing wealth management services. Welcome, Cern.
Thank you, Herbert. It's great to be back again.
Okay, so every time you've come back, you've built out your financial models. Your shows have been incredibly well received. People are very interested to learn more. And what's unique about today's show is you've actually worked out what's going to happen to these major corporations like Walmart and FedEx and others. And then you're going to also clarify exactly the business model for these robots and so forth. So let's get started with your deck that you prepared for us. What is the potential value of Tesla's Optimus robot?
Yeah, well, the developments in the humanoid robot space seem to be becoming fast and furious these days. And so it sort of forced me to continue to think about this and think about what this might mean for Tesla, its suppliers, and other big companies that employ a lot of workers, what it might mean for them. So today I'd like to explore a few ideas around that. And first of all, let's talk about Tesla. So if we go to this slide, yeah, this is a summary of Tesla's third quarter financials. The fourth quarter will be reported next week. So if we work from the left and go to the right, Tesla generates revenue from selling vehicles. And in the third quarter, 18.6 billion. The auto business, the total revenue is 19.6 billion. So there was another $500 million or so in regulatory credits and another $500 million or so in leasing revenue. So the automobile business is about a $20 billion business per quarter, or it was as of third quarter. Tesla also makes some money from energy generation and storage, and as well as services. So everything there that you see in gray and black makes up Tesla's revenue. Now, just to the right of that is the cost of revenue, the large red section. And that's the amount of money it costs Tesla to build its vehicles and provide those services that we see on the left side. Now, most of that is the cost of materials, but a good portion of it is the cost of labor to put everything together. And as you can imagine, too, to the extent that Tesla is buying parts from suppliers, there's an embedded labor cost in those items as well. So what we want to do today is explore the idea of if Tesla was able to utilize bots in their own business, what it might mean for Tesla and what it could look like. So let's just take a hypothetical example of a factory for Tesla that has 20,000 employees. I suppose you might think of this maybe as the Fremont factory or something like that. I've got three different scenarios here where workers are being paid a wage rate, an hourly wage rate ranging between 20 to 40. And it's my understanding that workers in Fremont are paid on a pay scale kind of within that range. Perhaps it's a little bit higher at the high end. Effectively, though, it costs Tesla more than $20, $30, or $40 an hour. There's benefits, there's taxes, and so on. So the effective wage rate that they pay is more like 30 to 60 an hour. Okay, and the average person then would make between 58 and 115. Sorry, not they wouldn't make that, but that's the cost to Tesla, including benefits, is $58,000 to $115,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And for 20,000 workers, that's between 1.1 billion and 2.3 billion dollars a year in labor in just one factory. So I wanted to explore what this might look like if bots became very capable and were able to replace half of the workers in the factory. Now, this is a point in the future. I don't know how distant this point is, but bot capability is not there yet today, but at some point it's quite likely it will be. So if you're replacing 50% of the workers, that's 10,000 people that would be replaced. But because the bot is able to work 7,000 hours a year, potentially 8,000 hours a year. I assumed only 7,000 hours a year. For every 3.5 people that you replace, you only need one bot. Because if a human worker is working 2,000 hours a year, the bot's doing 7,000. So there's a 3-to-1 ratio, 3.5-to-1 ratio there. So you only need to deploy just under 3,000 bots to get the equivalent workforce of 10,000 people. Now, that results in an annual labor savings to Tesla of between $500 million to $1 billion in just this one factory example. And if the capacity of the factory, let's say, is 500,000 vehicles, then on a per car basis, you're saving between $1,000 and $2,000 per vehicle. So this is as if Tesla passed on the entire cost savings to the customer in the form of lower prices. They could reduce the vehicle price by $1,000 to $2,000 by deploying bots for half of their workforce in this one factory. Okay. Now, I don't think Tesla would necessarily want to do this or need to do this. Tesla actually is more focused on growth. So it's an interesting exercise to see how much they could save, but it's even more powerful when you look at deploying bots to enable a growth strategy. And that's this slide. Same example, now just focusing on the middle wage rate to keep things simpler, $30 an hour. Annual labor cost per person there is $87,000, and the total labor cost for the factory is $1.7 billion. Let's say they want to expand this factory and double the capacity from 500,000 vehicles a year to 1 million. So they would need to hire another 20,000 people. But let's say they do that with bots instead. And that would be 5,714 bots. And I estimate that would cost Tesla about $200 million a year. And we can get into some of the cost assumptions later. So instead of spending $1.7 billion on 20,000 new people, it's costing them about $200 million. So there's $1.5 billion of labor cost savings by deploying bots. Let's say then in the original factory, the 500,000 vehicles were sold at $35,000 a piece. That's $17.5 billion of revenue. And let's just say that they earned a 15% net margin. They had net income of $2.6 billion. Now, working down to the bottom third of the screen, the additional capacity of 500,000, let's say they sell those vehicles at the same price. So now your total revenue is $35 billion. But your costs are only 28. Your costs did not double. The revenue doubled. The cost went up by 90%. So your new net income is up 159%, up to $6.8 billion. And your margins go from 15% to 19.4%. So tremendous leverage in terms of using bots as a growth vehicle, or helping grow the company and keeping those costs down.
Yeah, I love this, Cern. Thank you for doing this. This was the question people were having. It's all been just theoretical, but what you've done is put actual numbers here for both a factory existing, but more importantly, when it's growing, right? Because I think the position that Tesla will have is not to displace existing workers, it's to hire new bots for new roles, and the company's growing. So fantastic. So now I got an idea of what's going to happen to margins, what will happen to cost, and how this is going to impact the price of the cars. Fantastic.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think this is the case either. And so if we look at the next one, the third scenario, I think it's actually highly likely that Tesla passes on some cost savings to the customer. And in this scenario, it's the same growth scenario, but instead of selling the vehicles for 35,000, they reduce the price to 33.5. So their revenue actually goes down on the new 500,000 by about 4%. It's a 4% price decline to the customer, so making customers happy. They get to buy a car at a lower price. That's great. It's a win for them. Tesla's revenue goes up by 91%. Their costs go up by 90%, and their net income doubles. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And also
Nice.
the margins in this case go up by a little bit. So there's lots of different levers that they can pull depending on whether they want to become more profitable or sell more vehicles.
Yeah, I
So
agree. This
it's,
is the most likely.
yeah. Now, again, this is one factory. Tesla has more than one factory around the world. And Tesla also has a need to build additional factories at some point. And so you can imagine the sooner that Tesla is able to deploy bots in their own factories, and the sooner that Tesla is able to deploy bots in perhaps their suppliers' factories, then the cost savings are even greater from that too.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so the next two tweets or posts that you did on X, they are very, very powerful because this has got me thinking, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying. So take a look at this, folks. This is what Cern says. He said that if you could buy a machine that could save you $615,000 over 10 years, what would you pay today in order to do that? This is the exact question that global manufacturing firms and big companies who employ many workers will soon have to answer. What's clear to me? Once one company begins to deploy bots in its workforce, it will force all the others to do so, or they risk becoming non competitive as the labor cost savings potential is so great. Labor is well known to being the number one reason, like the number one expense for employers. If one company can do that cheaper, then they're going to beat you if you're competing with them. Then you say this, which I really love. The CEOs of big companies that employ a lot of workers should be calling Elon Musk now, paying Tesla a lot of money to be the first in line to receive Tesla's Optimus robot. There's going to be a line, and if you don't get your first 1,000, I don't know how long you'll wait before you get it. It's just like the NVIDIA chips. You got to get there and rush. If they're not first in line, they could be waiting for years and watching as their competition deploys humanoid robots, massively undercutting them. They should view it as a call option, the survival of their business. Exactly. What happens if UPS deploys the bots before FedEx? Wow. That's wow. What happens if Walmart deploys the bots before Amazon, Target, or Kroger? What happens if CVS beats Walgreens? What happens if Ford beats GM? Or Tesla beats Ford and GM, which is going to happen. Which corporate leaders will step up? Do any of them understand what's at stake? When you sent these posts out, it really triggered my thinking, and you're dead on. And so, because of this, people are going to rush. And if one does it, the others will fall quickly. That is so true.
Yeah, it seems clear to me that even if Tesla can ramp up the manufacturing of bots, let's say into the millions, tens of millions, that potentially the demand for the bots will be so huge that companies will be waiting years to get the bots that they would like to have. And in the meantime, if your competition can acquire the bots before you, suddenly you're at a massive competitive disadvantage. Right. Now, Tesla will have to be careful about how they allocate bots to various customers. I would imagine that they would want to supply bots, to Walmart and Kroger and Target and FedEx and UPS and everybody else as much as they can, obviously. But it is going to be an interesting challenge to see how that plays out once the bots become highly capable. And so what I wanted to do is give you an example with some numbers around Walmart and what it might look like for them. So again, this is a similar chart that we went through with Tesla. And last quarter, third quarter, Walmart did 160 billion in revenue. And this is the entire company, US, International, Sam's Club, etc. And their cost of sales was 121 billion. And a good portion of that is the labor cost. Walmart employs 2.3 million people around the world. So it's a huge labor force. And so I wanted to think about what it might look like if Walmart deployed bots in its workforce to try to reduce its costs. You can see that Walmart's profit on the far right, the operating profit only six billion. So the 4% margin on 160 billion of revenue. So a very, very lean business. And so you could imagine that a small amount of cost savings could make a huge difference to the company's profit. And so let's take a look at that. So this is Walmart in all three scenarios. And in the top third of the page, number of employees, 2.3 million. And I just assume that their average wage rate is around $15 an hour. I don't actually know what it is, but I think it's probably reasonable. For the company, it costs them about 22 an hour, and that's 100 billion in labor costs a year.
Wow.
Okay,
Lot.
so 25 billion a quarter. So of that 121 billion of cost of goods sold, 25 billion of that might be labor costs. So a big number, right? Now, the first scenario here where they replace 1% of their labor force by bots. It's 23,000 workers. That's probably attrition in just a few months, right? So they're not firing anybody. They may even have shortages. So that's 6,571 bots. And they would see, just by doing that, a $660 some million savings in labor costs. Now, their trailing 12 months pre-tax income was about 23 billion as of the end of the third quarter. And that 662 million savings would be a 3% boost to their 12-month trailing income by deploying 1% of their workforce to bots.
Yeah, this is the shocker. You're just talking about 6,500 bots. That's it. I mean,
That's it.
that's
And
very doable for Walmart.
this is for Walmart, which is one of the largest employers in the world.
They're not going to just buy 6,500.
No,
Yeah.
no, they're not. And so if you continue then to the right, 5% of the workforce saves them 3.3 billion and increases their net income by 14%. Their pre-tax net income by 14%. 10% adoption of bots, deployment of bots, 6.6 billion in savings, 28% increase. So companies like Walmart have every incentive to reduce their costs. They can pass some of these savings on to their customers, it makes them even stronger competitively. So there again, if Walmart was able to acquire these bots and their competition couldn't, then it might be in Walmart's best interest, rather than pocket the savings, to pass on those cost savings to their customers and further make it more challenging for their competition to operate.
That's very interesting. You should do that analysis, because that's most likely what they will do. They will, instead of savings, their more money for them as profit, they're just going to go and cut their prices more, and then the sales will go through the roof. And who will compete with them? How can you buy anything you buy from Walmart? It's going to be much cheaper than anywhere else. It already is. That's how they differentiate themselves, so they'll even make it more.
That's right. They have every incentive to do that, but it also depends on whether they are first or whether they're playing catch up.
Yeah.
Right. So again, this whole notion of, who's going to make that call to Elon and the Tesla team first, with money in hand, to be a partner in this bot development and buying bots.
It's probably, the phone calls are happening now. They should be, if that's what your message.
They should be. That's right.
Yeah.
So there's actually a pretty linear relationship here. The bot workforce allocation in blue, as that grows, compared to the growth in the net income. So if the bot workforce becomes 35% of the total for Walmart, they would see 100% increase in their net income. Sorry, it's pre-tax net income. I have a typo here. It should be pre-tax net income. So they can double the profitability of the company by having 1/3 of their workforce in bots. Now, today, that is not possible. It sounds improbable. It sounds crazy. But we're looking ahead to a world when the bots are capable of doing the work that the average Walmart worker can do. Right? It's working in the warehouse. It's restocking shelves. It's some fairly basic tasks, I think, where Walmart would see an opportunity to deploy that many bots. But
it's
even at low levels of deployment, it makes a material difference.
Yeah, there was another show that you and I did, right? Didn't you do one where you show that there's, if it's a bot, it can be low level worker all the way to a supervisor level. But even if you just take the low level stuff, which is the minimum wage, just pick and place role, very cheap, that alone is massive numbers. But as the bot progresses to skill capability, then it can replace more and more different kinds of jobs. So that's I know that you and Scott have been diving deep in exactly what kind of jobs within this, but this is the first time, thank you for doing this, where you actually took a company and you start analyzing their actual revenue and so forth and their employees and what's the likelihood. That's really cool. So now you've got this slide here that you're comparing Walmart to Target and Kroger. Let's show this one.
Yeah, it's a competitive landscape, and Walmart doesn't operate in a vacuum. These might be a couple of Walmart's competitors. There's a few others. But here's the Walmart analysis again with 35% of their workforce replaced by a bot. They see a 100% increase in their pre-tax net income in that scenario. So what does it look like for Target? Well, Target, as far as I can tell, is about 450,000 workers. And for simplicity's sake, I assumed that they're paid the same as Walmart workers on average. That may or may not be the case. But that's a total labor cost of about $20 billion a year. And if they replaced a third of their workers, they are replacing 157,000 workers with 45,000 bots. And they would save $4.5 billion a year. And they would see a similar increase in the percentage terms of their net income. Now, Kroger, to get a 100% increase in the net income, only needs to replace 20% of their workforce. And it might be that Kroger's profitability right now is lower, or it might be that Kroger's, the amount of labor as a percent of their cost of goods sold is higher, a higher percentage for them. But it's interesting. One observation I had is the companies that are perhaps the least well managed could actually see the biggest benefit by deploying bots.
Of course, yeah, because if you're lean and mean already, but if you're not lean and mean, you're going to become lean and mean when you use, lower cost labor.
That's right. And then to extend this further, I took a look at Amazon, UPS, and FedEx. And here I just stuck with the 35% just to have some comparable with the others. And Amazon could see a 66% increase in its pre-tax net income by replacing a third of their workforce. UPS 46% and FedEx 118%. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I think there may be something going on with FedEx's numbers where their trailing 12-month pre-tax income seems kind of low relative to UPS. I didn't have time to look into it to see if that's an ongoing thing or if that's kind of a one-time thing. But either way, all three of these companies would benefit tremendously by deploying bots to the extent they can across their workforce.
Mm-hmm. My observation was, and I might be wrong, but when you look at Walmart, Target, and Kroger, 35% of the replaced by bots, that seems pretty aggressive. Maybe many years from now, 20% still aggressive. I would start with 10. But what's interesting is you just keep pointing this out because it's 3.5 to 1 employee. One bot can do the work of 3. You don't need that many at all. So this is very reasonable. And then when you look at these delivery guys, I can see 35% easily for Amazon. I can see it easily for these UPS and FedEx because they're just pick and place. That's what these are doing, moving boxes around. That's their job. Now, of course, lots of the other jobs are kind of office work. There's a lot of jobs that are, flying planes and things like that, I suppose. But, I'd love to see the breakdown of what do these employees actually do. So that part, is 35% reasonable? That seems high, right?
Yes and no. It's interesting in Amazon's case. It's my understanding that they have 750,000 robots already deployed in their warehouses. Mm-hmm. So 750,000 relative to a workforce of 1.5 million, they're kind of there at 1/3 robots already.
Mm-hmm. True.
Right now, but they're not humanoid robots. They're different. Right, they're different kinds of robots, but still, it's robotic labor that has effectively replaced people. Now, they didn't actually replace people. Just as Amazon expanded, they expanded with hiring people and deploying robots. And I would imagine they would continue to do so.
Yeah, no, I can see it. It's just the time frame, right? So, but you're just pointing it out that once they get to this point, look at the savings. So basically, what you're saying is that it's too compelling. The story here is so compelling. It gets 3 for 1. One bot replaces 3.5 people. and the savings are so big because the cost of a person is so high, um, it's going to impact the bottom line. And so if you don't
Yeah.
act now, you're going to have a massive competitive advantage. If UPS is able to do this, but FedEx does not do it or delayed, UPS could win more business, undercut them in price, or deliver faster. Those everything could change.
All of the above. All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that is we want to dive into a little bit deeper is the orange line on that table, on that chart, which is the labor cost savings. I haven't discussed how I've calculated that, so let's dive into that a little bit deeper to give everybody some perspective about how I arrive at that number, because that's kind of a key number in this
And
analysis.
this is based on if I bought 150,000 robots, this is the labor savings. And so what
Yeah,
we need to figure out is how did you make that calculation? Okay.
that's right. So this is a chart just to give you some background. So when you employ somebody at different wage rates, there's the hourly labor rate, but then there's also the effective cost of the labor, which includes taxes that the employer pays, as well as benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just showing on this page at different labor rates, for example, $15 an hour, the effective rate, the effective cost per hour for the employer is more like $22, right? Because of the Social Security taxes, unemployment taxes that they pay at the state and federal level, and so on, and benefits. Depending on the company, it could be more or less. And depending on the country, it could be more or less. But in general, this is, there's a difference between the labor rate and the effective rate.
Yeah,
Okay.
this includes benefits, right? And so it's usually everything, right? It includes workspace, workstations. Usually it's around 30%, what I understand. But of course, it depends on, are you talking blue worker, white worker, those kind of things.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different factors, just in general. Yeah.
White collar. That's what I'm trying to say.
White
Blue
collar.
collar, white collar. Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah. So it's a
Okay.
lot more than just the salary. There's more. That's why the labor costs, you have to add them up. Mm-hmm.
That's right. So now this chart, I'm comparing the effective cost per hour for humans versus the bot.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of working backwards here. I'm going to get to the numbers that go into this, but there's a difference. So at $15 an hour, it costs you at $15 an hour wage rate, it costs the employer effectively $22 an hour to pay the employee with all the costs. But if they used Optimus Bot, it would be more like $750.
Cern, can you just explain something? Why is the blue line even going up at all? Why wouldn't it just all be the exact same price, regardless? Are you assuming that if you are replacing a higher skilled worker, that somehow you're going to pay more to Tesla because you're going to have to pay more for their skills rather than it's the same price? One bot can do all of this.
You're exactly right, though, because I believe that Tesla will price the bot based on its skill level and the type of work that it's doing, as well as the risk to the bot and the wear and tear on the bot. And here, just for simplicity's sake, I'm using different labor wage rates as a proxy for the bot's capability. So if the bot is only capable of doing $5 an hour work, then Tesla isn't going to be able to sell the bot for that much. Although it's still surprisingly high when we look at the numbers, and I'll show you in a second. But if the bot is able to replace somebody who's doing $40 an hour work, then Tesla could command a much higher price for that bot. And I'll show you what I think that is in a minute. So that's why those numbers are going up, because it represents the different skill level of the bot and what the bot can command as far as the price. And that's what we're kind of backing into here is what's the bot worth? How much can Tesla charge for the bot? Okay. On the next page, I discovered something interesting with the model that I'm using, and I'll show you the assumptions in a second. At each wage rate, it's very close to the realized hourly savings by using the bot. So for example, at $15 an hour, if you're paying a person $15 an hour labor, the bot is actually saving you close to $15 an hour. Okay, with how I priced it. Again, I'll show you in a second how I arrived, but it's kind of elegant in that sense because it makes a nice proxy. If you're paying somebody $20 an hour, then by using a bot, you're going to save $20 an hour.
And the reason why is because the bot can replace three people, not one, and other ways to massage it. But that's
Yeah.
sounds too good to be true, you know?
Well, when I first looked at it, I was like, did I do something wrong? How is this coming out this way? But as I thought about it and went through the numbers, it seems very clear to me that this makes a lot of sense. Now, there are significant costs to operating a bot, as well as hiring people to be bot minders. And we'll get there in a second in terms of the bot costs. Okay. So what I did was, if the bot, let's focus on the middle one, the $15 an hour one. If the bot can do work that a human who gets paid $15 an hour does today, and the bot can save a company, instead of hiring a human, the bot does the work, the bot can save the company over the lifetime of the bot, and I assume 10 years, could save the company $615,000. If that's the potential savings, then what is that bot worth? What should that bot be priced at so that Tesla and its shareholders are getting a fair deal and the customer is getting a fair deal? And all I did was say, let's take 50-50. Tesla keeps 50% of the savings and the customer keeps 50% of the savings. Therefore, the implied bot price is half of the lifetime savings of the bot.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the 615,000 is a discounted value to the present. It's present value savings to the customer
Mm-hmm.
of 615,000. So Tesla, therefore, should
Yeah.
charge $307,000 for the bot if they were selling it. And I don't think they will, but just if they were selling the bot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so to your point, your question earlier, why at $5 is the number lower? Well, it's because if the bot can only do $5 an hour work, then it's only worth $100,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Only worth $100,000. So for all those people out there that think that Tesla is going to sell the bots for 20 or 25,000, I
Yeah,
don't
that's
think so.
crazy.
I don't think it makes sense, because
Yeah.
if I'm a manufacturing firm and I can replace workers and save 205,000, I'm willing to pay way more than 20 or
Mm-hmm.
$25,000 for the bot,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Definitely willing to pay $100,000 for the bot. So if Tesla did sell bots for $25,000, I think they would be making a colossal mistake. And in fact, I would be out there buying them, as many as I could, and
Yeah.
redeploying them in factories where people could save $200,000 over the lifetime of the bot. Right. So they would be giving value to other people unnecessarily if they sold them too
Yeah.
cheaply.
Too cheaply. Yeah. The
Okay?
the savings is just so massive for these companies. Why would you sell it for so cheap? You don't need to. I
You
think
don't need
just
to.
people just in their head thought, how much would somebody pay for a bot? 20,000 seems like a lot. It's like a car, price of a
Yeah.
car. And they're not
You have
realizing it's the value of the what bot's going to replace, and it's way more than just one human.
it.
Yeah.
It's the value of what the bot can bring relative to the next best alternative. And the next best alternative is human labor. That's what the bot's replacing.
Mm-hmm.
So if the human labor is going to cost you a lot more, then the bot replaces that, and then that's how you calculate the savings. And again, my implied bot prices are just 50% of the savings.
Yeah. And actually,
Maybe
the funny
Tesla,
thing is, yeah,
I was just
you
going to
and
say,
I
maybe
have,
Tesla only keeps, 30, 40% of the savings, but I just did 50-50. It seems reasonable to me.
I think so too. And I think you and I have had this discussion, same with Scott Walter, that this is implying that the humanoid can do the job, but it has to do it at the same speed at the minimum. But in fact, there's a potential. You did not build this in. There's a potential that the humanoid at some point can actually be faster than the human. And so it's not just 3 shifts
Correct.
versus 1 shift. It could actually be 6 shifts, because if they're twice as fast than a human, less breaks, can just keep moving, no stoppage, can move faster because it's so accurate.
Yeah, there's that. There's also, even if there were no cost savings to using a humanoid robot, employers still may prefer them because they don't get sick, they don't show up late to work, they don't quit at the worst possible time, right? They don't take breaks, They don't get into fights. They don't steal anything from companies. Like all the problems that you have with humans, right? We're great, but we have some serious challenges.
Maybe less human resources needed, right?
Exactly. So just the cost savings and the reliability of the workforce may be a good enough reason to deploy bots, even if there were no labor cost savings.
Okay.
Right. And there
Very
must be a
interesting.
lot of companies out there that have difficulty keeping the workforce staffed at the levels they need to run efficiently. Right. So
Very cool.
the next step then is to say, okay, well, how does this look for Tesla? So we take that $307,000 implied bot price from the previous page, and that becomes Tesla's revenue. And I assume some expenses and so on, taxes, and the net income comes out to about $215,000 at that $15 an hour level.
Right
And
here.
so for
250.
Tesla, the profitability of these things is insane.
It's insane. What is your profitability percentage here? It looks like it's about 70%, 60.
Yeah, if you jump to the next page, you'll see it. It ranges from 60 up to about 73%.
Which, sorry, it's a little low. I've seen other business models where they calculate that the margin for a bot is closer to 80, 90%. I think you might be
Well, it
conservative
could
here.
be. And I think the challenge I have with those is they often don't assume extra costs of actually hiring people. So I'm assuming for every 15 bots that you deploy, you need a bot minder or somebody that can oversee them. And I assume that you'd pay those people $50 an hour plus benefits to do that work. Humans.
Yeah.
Right. So as much as we're talking about bots putting people out of work, the more bots you deploy, actually, there's also jobs for humans in there as well.
It's a conservative approach. It's a very safe approach. But theoretically, you won't need one for 15. You might need one for every 100. But yeah.
Ultimately, that's probably true. And maybe initially it's one for every 5, but over time it gets less and less and less. Yes. Now,
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't think actually that Tesla will sell the bots. I think actually that would not be the best move for them. And so what we want to do is take a look at, okay, what would the monthly subscription price be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that you clarified a subscription because I think at one point I was calling it lease, and it's not lease. This is not the right term. It's rental. This is correct.
Robots as a service is another way to look at it. But basically it's a monthly subscription. You might have to sign up, over a certain term. It may not be month to month. You might be signing up for 5 years, right? So there might be a longer term commitment, but depending on the bot's capability, again, using the labor wage rate as a proxy for the bot's capability, here are the monthly subscription prices. So if the bot can do $15 an hour work, however broadly that's defined, and I recognize that not all $15 an hour work has the same skill set as other $15 an hour work. There's a wide range in there. But again, it's a useful proxy at this point. You're looking at about $2,650 a month as a subscription price. Okay. And so, it's
pretty low.
When I first built my bot model, I just pulled a number out of the air and I used $3,600 a month. And then I did another one where it's $40 a day, and that's $1,200 a month. And the $1,200 a month one fits in here between the 5 and the 750 an hour. So if the bot's only capable of doing that kind of low-level work, then yes, it's only $40 a day is plenty to pay for it. But once its capabilities increase, then the bot value goes up.
I think $40 a day is way too low, right? That's crazy. And I know you want it to be conservative, but renting a bot for $40 a day, that's just, it's a giveaway. That's crazy. That's right. So this, like you said earlier, that why would anybody blink an eye if you say I can get a bot for $2,600 a month? For sure. Yeah.
For a factory, it's a no-brainer because of the money that they're saving. For an individual who wants a bot in their home to fold laundry, do dishes, cook, clean, etc., that might be tough. That's pretty expensive. But the challenge is for a long time to come, Tesla's going to be supply constrained. Even if they make millions of these things a year, they will be supply constrained because there's enough companies with enough factories in the world that would benefit dramatically. And actually, as consumers, we actually want the bots to go into factories because we will benefit from lower cost of goods. The things we buy in the store should become cheaper as bots become more prevalent. So I know everybody wants the bot in their home, folding laundry and so on, but I just don't see that as being the primary use case, the first use case, and actually maybe not for a long time. Certainly people that can afford to pay, $300,000 for a bot or $2,650 a month, they can certainly put one in their house, but it won't be because it's, saving the money.
I love that concept that you just said, which is this is a conversation we should continue. We should talk to other think tanks and other folks. But when you have a bot in a factory and you're able to lower their cost of goods, let's say Walmart, the manufacturer of those products, the FedEx and UPS delivery, prices of all goods, whichever goods is impacted the most, will fall. Then all humans will be able to buy these things at a cheaper price. The benefit society is amazing. It's like it's going to just completely reduce it. Now, of course, there's going to be need for bots to support humans in a home or workplace or whatever it is, the hospital. But the real benefit to society would be if they replace the factory. And a lot of these jobs people don't want to do anyways, right? Repetitive, dangerous. That's what Elon was saying. But okay, so very, very big idea there.
Yeah, at some point, there'll be enough bots in the world that they can fulfill all those roles, right? And I want that as much as anybody. But initially, and for many years, the bots are best used in the place where they can save the most amount of money. And if you think about the things that we buy, there's a whole supply chain. And so if all of those suppliers use bots and save a little bit of money and pass on some of that cost savings to customer, the resulting price, the end price, is going to be much lower. So if Walmart can save, 3 or 4%, and if their supplier saves 3 or 4%, and UPS and FedEx save 3 or 4%, all along that supply chain, then the magnifying effect of the lower costs is of great benefit to everybody.
Let's keep moving. This is
Okay.
big ideas here. Tell me what's next here.
The final thing, just to close this chapter, is looking at robots as a service, robots as a subscription. The business model looks the same. The profitability is the same, right? The 60 to 70% margins. And at $15 an hour work, it's $22,000 a year in net income per bot under a subscription service. Now, the difference is when you sell the bot, it's a one-time net income. When you do it as a subscription, it's over 10 years. And so, again, the business model is just as profitable as a subscription. And it allows Tesla to change the pricing as they go, as the bots become more capable.
Exactly.
Yep. Maybe there's some bots in the fleet that have old hardware and they're just not as useful. Okay, so you price those more cheaply. But as newer bots come off the line with different, capabilities, not just software, but maybe their hardware allows them to do more things, move faster or whatever it is, then they charge more for those. Or maybe there's a software update for the entire fleet that elevates the value of every single bot in the entire fleet. And in that case, Tesla raises prices a little bit. Supply would have to meet demand. And so wherever that is, different points in time, there could be a pricing adjustment.
Wow, Cern, I wish that you and I were actually hired by Tesla so we could be having this analysis right now. What a business or job to be coming up with these ideas and evaluating all these options. How would you do it? What would be fair to both the consumer and the company Tesla? It is very good thought experiments.
The first question is, how many can we make, right? Are we talking about millions? Are we talking about tens of millions, hundreds of millions a year? And I think I've said it before on your show that if you think about the best automaker in the world produces about 10 million vehicles a year. Or not the best automaker, but the automaker that makes the most vehicles, about 10 million a year. Apple and its suppliers makes over 200 million iPhones a year.
Yeah.
And so the bot, in terms of size, is between a car and a phone. And so it's not unreasonable to think that Tesla will one day be able to make these things in the 10, 20, 30 million range, and ultimately maybe more per year. So,
Yeah.
but even at that, it's going to take a long time for there to be enough bots in the world for everybody to get one.
Okay.
Okay, so thinking about then, that point where we get to there are enough bots in the world, or we're displacing enough human workers. So in the early days, we're not going to be displacing any jobs. There's enough worker attrition that companies will fill in with bots here and there. And as we showed, it doesn't take that much to make a difference. There are a lot of jobs out there that are unfilled for whatever reason right now. But fast forward many years, maybe a decade or two, as bots become more and more capable, they will start displacing all human labor. So we do need to think about, and some people aren't interested in thinking about this now, but it's something that I've given a little bit of thought to. What happens to people when they do lose their job and they can't find new work? For a long time, there'll be a retraining opportunity, right? We need bot minders. We need people who can work with the bots and train them and supervise them and maintain them. We need a workforce for that. That's a whole new job that does not exist today. So one idea that I've explored in the past is the idea of a robot tax. And that's been, as you can imagine, received by some people well and other people not so well. The other option for Tesla is just to do nothing, right? And just let things play out and let people lose their jobs, and whatever happens, happens. Not their responsibility. They're not the only robot maker in the world, et cetera, et cetera. I get that. I understand that. The third idea that I've given a little bit of thought to is this idea of setting up a nonprofit organization that I just called Amplify. And the idea is for Tesla to set some money aside from their own profits from the bots, and as we've showed, it could be tremendously profitable. Fund money into a nonprofit organization that is not controlled by Tesla. Now, Tesla has obviously a lot of say by how much money they put into it. So if they don't like what Amplify is doing, then they can stop the funding or create another Amplify 2.0 organization. And ideally, the whole bot industry would participate in this. It wouldn't just be Tesla, right? Because again, we're not saying that Tesla is the only one that's going to figure out humanoid robots. There's likely going to be other players. Hopefully there is. But the idea would be to use the money that goes into Amplify to retrain workers and maybe provide them with some income so that they could live and survive while they're doing the retraining they need to become bot minders, bot maintenance technicians, etc. So it was an idea that sort of, maybe the industry can get together and figure something out and help people with this transition. We don't need this anytime soon. This is an idea for some point in the future, but it's something I just wanted to put out there and get feedback on. And so that was the whole idea behind my post about Amplify.
Okay, let's talk about it, and we're going to show more about this idea. So first of all, the impact to society is going to be pretty massive in good ways and bad, right? It's going to lower the price of goods. It's going to reduce the dangerous work, repetitive work. There's a tremendous amount of potential benefit of doing this. But then there's the concern that this is going to displace workers. And what are we going to do? What is society going to become? Now, like you said, it's going to be many years in the future, because the next 5 to 10 years, there's actually studies that have shown that you can sell the bots, and factories will buy the bots that has nothing, that will never have to displace workers. Tesla could easily maybe 10 million or more, and just to jobs where you didn't have any workers. There's a demand for workers who don't even want to fill it. You're not displacing anybody, but at some point it does. So then the idea of a bot tax, which I'm very supportive with, government taxing, and you just like they would if a human had the job, the government taxes a little bit of that, they would tax bots. And therefore they get enough money that they can then afford a UBI, some sort of society kind of thing. Now, this idea that you have actually makes sense, Amplify, which is, okay, well, actually giving the money to the government is a bad idea. They're going to waste it. They're not going to deliver correctly. But I can see a scenario that you're talking about. Let's say Walmart decides to buy the bots from Tesla. And then Tesla says, okay, if you're going to use the bot to displace workers, here's money that we would have made, but I'm going to give it for you as a nonprofit for you to take care of those workers so that it's a good optics, but also you're helping that worker because there's going to be this, we're headed towards utopia, but in the path to utopia, there's going to be a couple of years where somebody's going to have no job at all. And they're going to be, they're going to be suffering. And so there needs to be this stopgap in order to help people. And so that's what you said here. I really like that concept. So I'm not going to show all these tweets, but you basically posted on your X. So you should follow Cern on X at Cern Basher and read through this. This is his proposal. What if Tesla offered their Optimus robots as a subscription service and put 50% of their gross profit into a nonprofit entity we'll call Amplify. Amplify will provide money for basic living needs and training to people who lost their jobs due to humanoid robots. Like I said, and it's a win-win-win. And what I like about it, like I said, is that it's targeted specifically to the customer who's buying the bots from Tesla. They can make sure that those specific employees who lost their jobs are taken care of versus, generically giving it to the government. I like it.
Yeah. And I would say since I made that post, my thinking has deepened a little bit on it. Again, I don't see this as a Tesla responsibility. I see this both as Tesla and its customers. So if Walmart is buying the bots, for example, Walmart could contribute some of the savings into Amplify as well. Yeah. And then also, I think we need to make a distinction between AI that's embodied in a robot and AI that's not. And so basically, every company that's deploying AI that's displacing workers would maybe have a potential to contribute to Amplify. And it doesn't have to be one organization. There can be hundreds of different Amplify organizations. They don't all have to do the same thing. It doesn't have to be this massive behemoth nonprofit organization that has all the money in the world. But the idea is to take some of these savings and help people, retrain them, re-educate, and maybe provide them with enough money to live on while they're doing that. That could be very helpful for a period of time until AI and bots are capable of doing every job. And then at that point, we need Neuralink. We need to become AI ourselves.
Yeah.
That's even more out there, but Elon, again, he's working on that. He's thought this through. The only way to compete against AI ultimately is to become that ourselves.
Join them.
Yeah.
Okay. Show me the numbers on Amplify. Let's walk you through the
yeah. And again, this is at 50% of Tesla's profit, which was probably too high. I think it's more of a shared responsibility. This is I priced the bots a little differently in this case. In this case, I said, because I viewed it initially as sort of Tesla's responsibility, instead of a 50-50 split, I did a 75-25 split where Tesla kept 75% of the savings. Mm-hmm. Right. And so the bot prices are a little higher, and therefore the cost savings are a little bit lower, but still very, very attractive. And that's what this chart is showing. Mm-hmm. So the cost savings is the difference between the blue and the orange. So $15 an hour, it costs $714,000 over a 10-year period, and the total savings is still $814,000.
Yep, still a lot. Yeah,
still a lot. Still very attractive for companies to deploy bots. Mm-hmm. And then the next chart is, what does this do for Tesla's profits? Well, still 30% margins. Okay, it's not 60 or 70, and there's not many companies that have a 60 or 70% margin, and 30s to high 30s is still a very, very high margin. Right, so it's still a very attractive business, even if they're giving 50% of their gross profit to Amplify. So this, as crazy as it sounds, it still looks pretty good for them.
Did you already calculate how much the employee would get who is displaced? Because obviously I can see Tesla doing this. This is part of their mission. really is a high level calling instead of just making as much money as we can. So I like this, which is you're still going to get very good, decent margins for the stockholder here. But how about the employees? Will they get like 2/3 of what their salary would have been? What is it?
Well, I think it depends on how many people need it. And I calculated that for every 100 million bots that are deployed to Amplify, depending on your wage assumptions at the bottom there, that Amplify receives anywhere from 700 billion to 6 trillion a year in receipts. So, you can do a lot with $6 trillion. And again, this is just Tesla contributing to it. This is not anybody else. So the numbers could be staggering. Yeah, here are the numbers here on a per bot basis. So at $15 an hour wage, that's the implied pricing. Tesla's making a lot of money, and Amplify receipts are even higher. So it's similar to that robot tax idea that I had, where the government makes more money than Tesla does in profits. In this case, Amplify would be taking in more than Tesla earns as profit. Maybe it doesn't need to, and 50% of the gross profit seems like a high number. Maybe it only needs to be 25, but the idea is out there in terms of the industry can do something to help all the people that might be displaced or that will be displaced by robot labor. And I think, again, by AI in general, whether it's embodied or not, that if we don't do something, if we don't find a way to retrain people and help them live, then we're kind of rolling the dice potentially in terms of what might happen. And do we really want to leave it just in the government's hands, or do we want to try to do something as an industry to try to help before perhaps a more heavier hand of government steps in? Now, there are those out there that say this is not Tesla's responsibility. The shareholders shouldn't have to bear the cost of this. And I hear you. I agree. But whose responsibility is it? If it's the taxpayer, then we're facing a robot tax. Or if you say, you know what, let the chips fall where they may, then we're running the risk of major disruptions if you have people out of work and can't afford to feed themselves and live. So I don't know what the right answer is. In different countries, I guess we'll try different things, and I guess we'll find out ultimately what works. But it was really just an idea I wanted to put out there for discussion and get feedback on.
I think they're very big ideas, and we should explore them and learn them and talk about it. Which is, one is the government tax per bot, and the other one is this Amplify nonprofit. I think that it makes sense because Tesla's mission is to help society. Like they haven't actually said what their mission is for the bot, right? It's for sustainable energy, but it's for humanity. You've heard Elon talk about this so many times. It's like, why is he doing everything he's doing? He wants to preserve humanity. He wants society to be better. And this bots could become negative, and so he'll want to prevent that. It may be also for reasons like bot acceptance. Companies may not want to do this. Imagine if, just like unions can force a company, that you can have strikes because you're going to replace everybody's jobs. Screw you, we're going to jump now, and then what's going to happen to you? So they're going to force them. So this is bound to happen. I'm glad you're thinking about it now. It's almost like guaranteed. I can't think of any scenario where there won't be either an Amplify nonprofit or a government tax. Just can't see it happening. The disruption is too big.
It certainly feels that way. I mean, certainly there are people out there that say, well, every single technology revolution that's come along, we've always created more jobs than we destroyed. And I get it. I understand that. And I believe that to be true. What I'm saying is, what happens if this is different this time?
I think it's different this time. You and I have talked about this. It's different this time because it's every single job, not just every white collar job, every blue collar job. It's like every job. So and then the other thing that people are saying now is, oh, when the bots come and they do all this work for me, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go create music. I'm going to write creativity. I'm going to write books. I'm going to write painting. Well, the AI can do that better than I can. So they can write poems and write lyrics and write music better than I can. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing.
there may well come a choice when we have to say, okay, we either put a Neuralink-like device in our brain and become AI capable ourselves, right? That brain interface computer, so that we then can compete with AI, right? Or become on the same level. Or you may say, you know what, I don't want that. I'm checking out. I'm not going to participate in that. In that case, then how are you going to live? How are you going to survive? Where's the money going to come from? I mean, these are crazy things to talk about, but at the limit, that's potentially what humankind is facing. We are building systems, computers, and embodied AI that will be more capable than us. It's just a matter of time. Now, I'm not saying this is 5 years, 10 years, it could even be 50 years away or more. Who knows? I don't know what the time frame is.
Right. Yeah, okay, we don't know what the time frame, but I think what you've done with all your analysis and showing it, like somebody has to start with these numbers instead of just arbitrary guessing and all that. And you've done quite a number of this analysis. What it's showing, no matter how you slice and dice this, a bot is very, very compelling as a business model. The cost of building the bot, what the value it's going to replace per employee, even different kinds of skill sets, it's still going to be so lucrative for employers, and it's going to create them a competitive advantage. And then your big idea was, because of that, employers are going to actually rush to try to get this sooner than later. And you have this existential potential that your competitor who goes ahead of you could actually wipe you out or could severely damage your business, because the margins are so big. This is like one of the best business models I've ever seen on a subscription basis, on a regular basis, not a one-time thing. It's like every year from now on. And it can do, if it serves its promise, it can do all sorts of jobs, like every job. That's why it's a generalized humanoid form factor, was that you don't need to change anything. A bot can walk into your home, pick and, do the coffee machine, do the dishwasher, open the fridge, cook you a meal, because it's like it's humanoid. It's got the same fingers, same everything. So this is great. Yeah.
I do think that we're going to advance from just humanoid pretty quickly.
Right.
There'll be other
For sure.
form factors.
Oh, yes.
And the other thing I think too that's worth mentioning is we talk about how this is so compelling for companies, but also if we elevate it to country level,
Yeah.
right? It is compelling for one country versus another. So even if we take a moral stance and say, you know what, we can't do this to people, we can't lay them off, the labor unions are going to complain and all this stuff. At the country level, none of that matters.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this before. This is a form of economic warfare, and we do not have a choice. If we don't do it, another country will, and they will undercut us, and suddenly we'll lose competitiveness. We don't have a choice. So whatever arguments people throw out there about how morally we shouldn't do it, I hear you. I understand. I completely understand, but it doesn't matter. Right. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of that bad news. It doesn't matter in warfare or economic warfare. No one cares about your moral position. It's not relevant in any kind of scenario like that. And so again, I don't want to sound so bleak about this, but this is an economic imperative, and the savings are just too great to ignore. And that's why we're barreling down this path as fast as we're seeing, and all the developments that we're seeing each week. And it may even accelerate from here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So you have a mixture of really big ideas, but also you shared your actual, financial discussion. So folks, you have the access here to these numbers. You can pump in your own different, numbers. I think, Cern, would you give me the spreadsheets, let people play around with it? But this is something people can give them some thought, right? Just try to figure out yourself. What do you think is accurate, not?
Yeah, I haven't shared the spreadsheets yet. I try to be very transparent about how I'm developing these, right? And I take people through step by step as to how I've done it. Today, I didn't show any of the actual spreadsheets. I think I have at various other times. But I prefer to have a dialogue and feedback with people, and I go back and I rework some of my spreadsheets. And sometimes people say, on X, when I post, they say, what about this scenario? Well, I often produce it and post it. So if people want to engage that way too, I'm happy to do that. But I'm hesitant to just provide my spreadsheet because it's a work in progress. Things are changing. And so it's not any kind of finished product yet. And it may never be, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you and I have done several shows in the past already, and now this is yet another one. And every time you're taking these ideas and drilling in. And this time we took a look at what's the impact to Walmart, Kroger, UPS. I love that. That's the big idea. And then we also have conversations about what's going to happen to society and countries. Thank you so much, Cern. We're looking forward to you coming back again in the future. This is important. If not, between this and AGI, AGI is probably more important, but just by a little bit, because AGI is going to be, they call it embodied AGI is what we just talked about now. So thank you so much, Cern. Follow him on X at Cern Basher. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.